this meeting of the Ways and Means Committee back to order. Thank you, and I just want to say a big thank you to all right, it's a little loud. Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the staff that had to work really hard to turn all of our packets around, get everything ready so that we could be here. And so thank you for working really hard to make sure we could get in and get going so we can get home at a reasonable time. And so thank you to all the staff who made that possible. And we're going to start tonight on the agenda. And I know there's a number of you here for House File 4, so we will be getting to that as the second bill on the agenda. But we have one that we're going to take up first as a member, a former member of this committee who's no longer on this committee. We want to be able to process this, and then he can head out for the night. So with that, we will take up House File 172, and we will have Vice Chair Edelson. Would you like to motion that House File 172 be re-referred to the General Register? That is my motion. Thank you. And with that, Representative Hansen, on to House File 172.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This is the 2023 LCCMR bill, the Legislative and Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. It reflects the recommendations from the LCCMR. This year's proposals support are bipartisan and bicameral. Each received the necessary 12 out of 17 votes of the commission. The actual vote was 13 yes, 3 no, and 1 excused. The LCCMR includes 5 House members, 5 Senate members, and 7 citizen members. It appropriates $79.644 million from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund in fiscal year 24 and $189,000 from the Great Lakes Protection Account. Money from the Great Lakes Protection Account may only be used for protecting water quality in the Great Lakes. The LCCMR makes recommendations on how that money should be spent. Article 2 contains policy recommendations developed by the LCCMR concerning capital projects funded by the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. The chair of the subcommittee who developed that bipartisan recommendation was Rita Albright from Bemidji. I'd ask for your support. It does not have any general fund impact.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. And just again, no fiscal, no general fund impact here. So Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Hansen, thank you for being in the committee. It's always good to see the senior member of the Dakota County delegation in this committee. Madam Speaker, or Madam Chair, members, I'll be voting no on this bill today. I'm opposed to it, but I recognize that there's a diversity of opinion on this from other members of my caucus, but I'll be voting no on your bill and wish you continued luck on this bill through the process, hoping that perhaps it can improve. Thank you.
Any further discussion to House File 172? Representative Acomb.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the author. I, as a member of LCCMR, just want to thank Representative Hansen for bringing this bill forward so early this year. Our LCCMR process it worked really well last year. We came out with a recommendation that was, as he said, bipartisan, bicameral, and really doing great things for Minnesota. So thank you. I certainly support the bill strongly and appreciate the author's.
Thank you, Representative Acomb. Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Hansen, you probably don't have this breakdown, but in the future, I'm wondering if you could possibly break it down also by what money is going to the University of Minnesota. On the Higher Ed Committee, we're really trying to look at not just the jurisdiction of money that we send to the University of Minnesota, but there's many dollars in other areas as well. So that's just more of an ask. I didn't expect you to know it off the top of your head. That's a little unfair, but I'm quickly adding it up in the spreadsheet, but if you could have that in the future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative O'Neill. The staff from the LCCMR are here. I'm sure they're working on it right away, and we'll get that information to you and the members of the committee.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. Further discussion to House File 172. Okay, seeing no further discussion, Vice Chair Edelson, would you renew your motion that House File 172 be re-referred to the General Register? So moved. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. No. The motion prevails and House File 172 is re-referred to the General Register. Thank you, Representative Hansen. And our next bill up tonight is House File 4, Representative Gomez. And Rep. Perez Vega is also going to co-present the bill. So welcome to the committee. We're glad to have you here.
Gracias.
Great. And with that, you are a member of this committee, so would you like to make a motion that House File 4 be re-referred to the General Register?
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
Wonderful, Representative Gomez. So on to your bill.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Before you for your consideration tonight is House File 4, which is driver's licenses for all. We have everybody on this committee has heard about this bill, I think, over many years, over decades even. We had a wonderful hearing on this bill in the Transportation Committee, and we heard from dozens of community members, business groups, agricultural groups, law enforcement, faith communities about the importance of this bill for many reasons, for economic vibrancy, for safety on our streets, but most importantly, for human dignity and recognizing the people who are living beside us in our communities and don't have access to this most basic thing that they need to provide the lives that their families need. So prior to 2003, you did not have to demonstrate lawful status, or you didn't have to demonstrate anything about your immigration status in order to access a state identification or a Class D driver's license. What's called a non-compliant license. That changed in 2003, and since then, a couple of years later, since that time, the community has come and asked us to reinstate the situation that had always been in our state for decades before that. So, I know that we're focusing here on the fiscal implications of this bill, and there's a fiscal note that you'll find in your packet. The allocation for this comes from the vehicle services account. It's $2.3 million in the first biennium and $1.4 in the out biennium. We're expecting. You can kind of read through what the assumptions are, but sort of expecting that people will come and try to access these licenses. There will be a sort of a flood at the beginning, and then sort of a more modest allocation moving forward. I just finally want to say thank you to all of the people who are joining us here tonight, and who have been here for years and who have been here for decades. And we appreciate your work and we appreciate your persistence. And it's our intention to, to do what you've been asking us to do for 17 years and to sign this into law this year. And I wanted to give my co-author a chance maybe to offer a few comments also before we move on, if that's possible, Madam Chair.
Sure. Thank you, Representative Gomez. Representative Perez-Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Maria Isa Perez-Vega. I represent District 65B, which historically is known as the first Latino community in this great state of Minnesota that has been the home of welcoming not only Latino immigrants, but all immigrants from all areas of the world that has made an impact to the state of Minnesota. I just want to let folks know that we are living in this great state of Minnesota that has a total of 476,556 immigrants, okay? That is 8.5% of our population, according to the American Immigration Council. And, thinking about that population, about how much in taxes has been made, and that's over $4.8 billion here in the state of Minnesota. With the number of entrepreneurs of over 19,000, close to 20,000 entrepreneurs who help the economy in the state of Minnesota. And a lot of those folks are here today in this room, have been for 20 years since this has been an issue in our immigrant community. Not just our Latino community, but our African community, our Asian immigrant communities, our European immigrant communities. We are facing a human rights issue right here. Our citizens that are affected by this are facing public safety issues. It's not a matter of can we do it, because we've already done it. We had immigrants who are our colleagues who have became citizens, and prior to becoming citizens have received their driver's licenses before 2003. So I want you to just, when you're making those decisions today, when you're hearing about the numbers, think about the numbers that I gave you today and how that impacts this state of Minnesota on both sides. Gracias.
Thank you. Discussion to House File 4. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chair Gomez, I just want to make sure I've got some preliminary stuff online here so that I'm correct with that. My understanding is the need for this bill is so that we can allow driving privileges for people in this state that are not U.S. citizens and do not have the authority by federal government to actually work or be here in this country. Is that correct?
Representative Gomez.
Representative Petersburg, yep, this reverts, House File 4 reverts us back to pre-2003 policy when you didn't have, when people were allowed to access driving privileges by proving that they could drive, by proving that they could pass a written and behind-the-wheel test, knowing that that has nothing to do with immigration status, but it's a basic safety issue for those on our streets. So that's the intent of the bill.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. I don't think that answered the question specifically, but since 2003, prior to that, 2001, there have been a lot of issues in regards to identity and concern about the security in the United States. And reason why we have real ID, driver's license, and so forth is to verify a legal status here as well. And since we really understand that driver's licenses are used here in the state of Minnesota for more than just driving. Certainly, the driving privileges is something that the state can do, and we certainly can accommodate that. But because a driver's license can be used for so many other things, and there is no indication on any of these driver's licenses as presented by this bill that it's different than any other, you can understand how easy it would be for people to get confused on whether or not it's legitimate for some of the options that grant those that have driver's license and are also U.S. citizens or have U.S. authority to do so. And so we tried in other committees to try to get a different view and in different direction, even add some words that just says not for voting, because that is one of the things that driver's license can be used for is in registration. Same day registration, that has failed. And so there's a lot of concerns here. Whether or not it's real or not, the perception has a lot to do with it. We're dealing with dollars that are in the fiscal note coming from U.S. citizens and Minnesota citizens and being used for this particular piece. And I think there's some concern about the safeguards that we put in place and have not put in place. You know, if it was talking about reinstating the driving privileges, that's certainly admirable and something that we can work towards. But doing it in a way in which it appears to be the same as others that have U.S. citizenship, I think is very dangerous and something that we have to really be concerned with. I'll be voting no on this bill for that reason, and because of the dollars that citizens have put up for this. But I thank you for your attempt and for what we need to do, and I think we can work on it later to try to get some of that done.
Representative Hassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Thank you both to Representative Aisha Gomez, who's my sister district, and Representative Maria Isa, who's also on the other side, south side, west side,
That's
both
right.
being represented here. It's an honor for me to say that I do support this bill. As someone who is an immigrant, came here fleeing from a war-torn country. People don't get here because they are looking for some luxury life. People get here because they're running away from war, they're running away from corrupted governments, they're running away from famine, they're running away from drug warlords. They get here, and the people that we're talking about are our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, people who live in our community, who are already here, who are already working, and are, some of them risking their life to drive their kids to the doctor's office, to school, pick up your kids from school. So we're not really asking something impossible here. What we're asking is, can we have the compassion to say that because we have this privilege of like going to the, DMV and getting driver's license, that this immigrants also deserve that right. And 4 years ago, when this bill was in front of us, I talked about my family story. My mom, when the war happened, crossed the border between Somalia and Kenya illegally because she wasn't thinking about legality. She wasn't thinking about anything else. She was worried about saving her 10 kids and her one grandchild. So when you have to make the choice between saving your family and crossing the border legally or illegally, you're gonna save your family. So I really would love for us to have the conversation of these people are here. They're our neighbors, they're our community members, and they deserve the right to drive. It's a public safety issue. It's an economic issue. Just think about how many people will be working and paying taxes to us. So even if we don't care about the morality and humanity issue, it's about public safety. You want the person that, if, God forbid, you have an accident, that the person that's driving that car to have a driver's license and B, to have an insurance. And if a person doesn't have a driver's license, they can't get insurance. So I really want us to ground ourselves in, even if we forget about humanity, to ground ourselves in public safety and economic issue. And what's good for Minnesota? What's good for Minnesota is that we give people the right to drive so we can all be safe and people can pick up their kids from school without worrying about being caught. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hornstein.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I wasn't going to mention this particular story until I heard the very compelling story from my colleague, Chair Hassan. But my mother also crossed a border illegally. After surviving the Holocaust in World War II, she crossed into Austria illegally from Czechoslovakia. And so I think many of if you go back in all of our family histories, many of our family's histories will have that story. But thank you to Representatives Gomez and Perez Vega for bringing this bill. Chair Gomez had mentioned the hearing we had in transportation, and I just wanted members of the Ways and Means Committee to know that it was an extraordinary hearing for many reasons, but I can't remember in my over 20 years here a bill that had such broad support. How often do we have business and labor together? The faith community, law enforcement, and most importantly, the stories that we heard from so many aspiring citizens, especially youth. And so I think that there is a growing consensus around this bill across the state, and I hope everyone will join Representative Gomez on this committee in voting yes for this bill.
Thank you. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Gomez, there you are. Representative Gomez.
You're tall.
My question is more from an IT back office perspective. So I'm not going to comment on the bill at all as to some of the things that have just been said, but I have some concerns with one of the other bills that I think is also coming forward with the motor voter, and that this bill is going to create quite potentially some back office nightmares from an IT perspective as to who can and cannot be legally enrolled to vote as a result of motor voter becoming potential law as well. Can you address that and maybe allay some of my fears? Because I think that if you're going to do a bill, you want to make sure that it doesn't cause problems down the road. And from everyone's favorite Republican IT nerd, Representative Liebling smiled, I just have questions because I don't see it going without incident, and I don't think that you want that. So can you tell me some of the steps and things that you're trying to pursue? Because I know that some of the members would like to see something on a license, but it's all, I mean, you can print it on the license, that's great. You could put it in big bold letters, whatever, but it has to happen behind the scenes in a database somewhere. And I don't know that that's been thought through. So maybe help me understand how you're going to achieve that.
Representative Gomez.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Representative Nash. Motor voter, is that automatic voter registration? Okay, thank you. I was like, I'm not on the elections committee, so I wasn't familiar with that term. So it's a good question, and it's a question that a lot of people have had. And so I have talked to the Secretary of State's office. The situation right now is that people of many different immigration statuses are able to hold Class D licenses in the state of Minnesota. If you are a recipient of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, you can get a license, but you don't have the ability to vote. If you're a green card holder, you can get a license, but you don't have the ability to vote. If you have temporary protected status, for example, there are a number of different immigration statuses that people can have where they do not have the right to vote, but they do have access to a Class D driver's license, a non-compliant license. It just means non-compliant with Real ID or Enhanced ID. And so I did speak to the Secretary of State's office, and as part of the, so I'm not the Democratic IT person. That's this gentleman right here, Chair Noor, who will, if he knows, he'll probably help me out if I get something wrong. But I spoke to them. The way that the data is transferred is from the sort of license records is that only people who have demonstrated citizenship only that information is passed over for automatic registration. And so that's already, because we literally already have, I don't know, probably tens of thousands of people in Minnesota who have licenses, who go to the DMV, but who don't have citizenship and don't have the right to vote. This is sort of adding more people to that group, but they're already accounted for in that policy. And I do just want to address sort of the voting issue in general. We had a pretty extensive conversation about this in the Transportation Committee, and Representative Petersburg just referred to it as, you know, people are able to use their IDs or their licenses to do things other than driving. But we have a system in Minnesota where you don't, I mean, a driver's license is not required to vote. What is required is to establish your identity and your place of residence. Those sometimes are on the same credential, sometimes they're separate. So that's why when you look through, you'll see primary and secondary documents in House File 4, which is sort of like the same thing as the Secretary of State's. It's like you show an ID, and then you can have like a bill, or, you know, kind of, there's a number of other secondary documents that can establish your residence. But the third piece, which is very important, is the attestation that we all sign before we receive a ballot. And what that says is it attests that you are of legal voting age, that you live where you say you live, and that you are a U.S. citizen. And it is a felony to falsely attest to U.S. citizenship. And it is taken very seriously. It has hefty criminal consequences. It has permanent, lifelong immigration consequences. And so when you talk to the Secretary of State's office in Minnesota, or any of the, is it 18?
It's 18 states. 18
states that allow people to access driver's licenses regardless of their immigration status, or when you look to decades of Minnesota history before this policy was changed in 2003, you simply don't see some widespread kind of phenomenon of people trying to vote intentionally when they're not eligible to vote. Because of that, you know, now it's like a receipt that we sign, and if you read through it, it kind of like lays it out for you. And because of those consequences, if you do falsely attest to U.S. citizenship. So I went a little bit further on the voting thing, just because I know that there are questions, and I think that I know that they're genuine. And so I've kind of like learned more about it in the last few weeks. And so just wanted to share that. Happy to take any follow-up about AVR if that didn't, or about motor voter if that didn't get to it.
And we'll do follow-up questions, and I know we have a lot to get through, and we will take a little bit of leeway here to go into a wonderful backstory, which is super helpful for the question at hand. But, you know, our goal here is to really focus on the fiscal and do that. And I know that
This question's about.
and I will absolutely get to. I'm just saying, I'm not saying this to Nash or Gomez right now, but just a broad reminder to the committee of why we're here as we go about hearing a bunch of bills that have been through committees where they probably had been really vetted, even though we don't all sit on them. So that's just a general reminder, not because of exactly what's happening right now. But with that, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And That was the lead in to this question, because this is the fiscal committee and we do have to appropriate money to make this happen behind the scenes. I'm sure Representative Neuer would agree with me that more testing is going to be better for a launch if this becomes reality. It should come as a surprise to zero people that Minnesota doesn't exactly have the greatest track record on creating software, and that there have Representative Hornstein's laughing because he lived through it as well as I did. I'm just trying to make sure that if this becomes law, that you not only have thought about it, and it sounds like you have to some degree, but that you've also appropriated money to make sure that that happens behind the scenes. Because I think I said this, Representative Hornstein heard this a number of times, nobody forgets a bad launch in software. People usually get fired, curse words are said, new curse words are invented, and I just want to make sure that you're thinking through all those things. I have reservations based on my professional experience, and I hope that by the time this makes it into law, if it does, that you've considered that and taken care of those potentialities.
Representative Gomez.
So, Representative Nash, you talked about more testing. I guess I sort of maybe if you want an answer from me, I maybe need a little clarification. Right, IT testing. I guess I don't.
So we'll take this offline so that,
Okay.
because I'm getting the stink eye from the chair.
She would never, Madam Chair.
It's like, dear God, Nash, stop with the IT. But beta testing, making sure that before it actually goes live, that you try to break it a few times and then fix it and then break it a few more times and then you roll it out to the public, because we've had far too many pieces of software here in the state of Minnesota that no one did it. They just sort of prayed over it briefly and said, well, here we go.
Or they knew it was good.
So if this becomes law, I don't want that to happen, because then more bad things happen.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Nash. Let's talk more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was not giving Representative Nash the stink eye.
So you say.
With that further discussion, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for the record, I just want to say that I don't think you're capable of having a stink eye, Madam Chair. And that has nothing to do with me asking for you to hear any of my bills in this committee. It's completely independent of that. Madam Chair and members, I do think it's important to highlight what we do agree on tonight. The first thing is that the United States of America is awesome, right? That we're in the best country on the planet. That we're such an awesome country that hundreds of thousands, millions of people every year want to come to the United States for hope, for opportunity, for a better life for they and their families. And that's a good thing for all of us to celebrate. There's a lot of negativity in our media, a lot of focus about what's wrong in America, but let's never lose track of the fact that America is the first, best, and original place for hope and freedom in this world. And it's an awesome country, and we agree on that. The second thing is that when it comes to immigration, make no mistake about it, that immigration is a net add to the United States of America. It really is the secret sauce that makes our country better than other ones. Across the world, entrepreneurs, risk takers, talent seekers, they come to the United States. They come to this shining city on a hill to live out their dreams. And it's a reason why we are able to consistently defeat our international competitors. And those are good things that we should be proud of. The bill today in front of us is here primarily because of a problem at the federal level. Federal immigration laws make no sense. They're broken, they're busted, and they have been for a long time. And as with a lot of things when the federal government screws something up, state and local units of government are left to pick those pieces up and to try to craft solutions to those problems. Well, the federal solutions are beyond our capabilities, members. We don't have the ability to pass laws at the federal level. But what we can do in our conversation about these laws is understand the consequences they have locally. So in the bill, the stated solution for this bill in the fiscal note, we do see that only 20% of those who are here in the country, in the state of Minnesota illegally, would even apply for these licenses. So 4/5 of the problem is going to be by the author's documents and the fiscal research is going to be ignored and left the same. Those are the assumptions that are in the fiscal note. In addition to that, whether we like it or not, no neighboring state in Minnesota allows this currently. So we are, whether we intend to or not, providing an incentive. We are providing an encouragement for people who are illegally in our country to come to the state of Minnesota. There are many ways to solve this problem. There are many concerns. I think there's a good faith effort on behalf of the author and those who support this to solve a problem, but there is in fact a better way. And I would hope that the DFL majority would choose, rather than using their legislative majorities to enact a DFL-only bill, is to work collaboratively with both sides of the aisle and to pass a bipartisan solution. So, Madam Chair, I'll be voting no on this bill, but I would encourage the author and the DFL to please work with Republicans so we can have a bipartisan bill that accomplishes the stated goals of the bill without providing Minnesota to be a magnet for those who are in our country illegally. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Don't see any further discussion, so I'll come back to the bill author for final word on the bill. So Representative Gomez.
I just would say thank you again, mostly to the community. Thank you for all of your work. This is our last step before this goes to the floor. And we appreciate you all being here and appreciate everything that you've done and want you to know that you are valued members of our community. And that's something that I think we can all agree on. And so thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Rep. Pres Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quiero dar las gracias a la comunidad que están aquí. I would like to give thanks, just echoing what my colleague, Rep. Gomez, said, to our community that is here, that has been luchando, that has been fighting for this, and for those kids, the kids that are citizens that are out there who look at this as not just an opportunity for their parents, but an opportunity for them to be able to heal the nightmares and the traumas that they have suffered because they feel fear. They feel fear for something that is just unjust. And I really hope that the members of this committee on both sides seek the justice in trying to heal that trauma for these children, these great children who are born, whether they're born in Minnesota or, yes, this great country of the United States of America and other states, that their parents have the ability to be able to get a driver's license. Gracias.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody who came for a 5:30 hearing to be here. We don't often have a audience like this in Ways and Means, so it's nice to see the community really show up in support of the good work our bill authors and others have done over the years. So with that, Representative Gomez, would you like to renew your motion that House File 4 be re-referred to the General Register?
Yes, please, Madam Chair.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. No. The motion prevails and House File 4 is re-referred to the General Register. Thank you. And our next bill on the agenda for today, and as much as we like to clap, we don't allow for audience participation. So the next bill on the agenda for today is House File 90. And if you are leaving, if we could just have a quiet exit to the committee, as we do have a few more bills we need to process tonight. Thank you. All right, Representative Becker-Finn, you are a member of the committee, so would you like to make a motion that House File 90 be re-referred to the General Register?
Yes, that is my motion, Chair Olson.
Wonderful. And you do have an amendment, so could you please move the DE2?
Yep, I would move the DE2 amendment.
Great. And do you want to explain a little bit, or would you prefer to get it in the order first?
Let's get it in order, and then I can walk through it, Madam Chair.
All those in favor of the DE2, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. To your bill as amended, Representative Becker-Finn.
All right. Thank you, Chair Olson. Committee, so this is the Public Defender Funding Bill. The amendment gets the numbers in the right shape so that it's in line with the governor's budget as we move forward. However, I would caution us that we've talked about bigger numbers, and the question that I had really put forward to the public defenders 2 years ago was, what is the amount of money that it would take for our citizens to have the right to counsel that they are entitled to? And for years, nobody had really been asking that question. They had sort of looked at it the way we look at any other budget item, as far as, oh, we'll ask for a little bit of increase this year, we'll ask for a little bit next year. And what we're talking about here is a constitutional right. And I want to be really clear about what I mean when I say that. The Sixth Amendment of the United States, this is also in our state constitution, but the U.S. Sixth Amendment says that you have a right to a fair trial and that you have a right to counsel. And further, Gideon v. Wainwright is a really established case from 1963. This has been upheld for decades, that this right to counsel needs to be funded by the states. And what we've seen over the years is that we have failed as a state to fund this constitutional right that our citizens have. So that essentially, if you do not have the means and your personal physical liberty, whether you might be imprisoned for a crime, you are not receiving the counsel that you are entitled to under our U.S. Constitution, because we have a system where our public defenders are overworked and underpaid, and the caseloads are such that it just is impossible for anybody to manage. As hard as our public defenders work and as good as the work that they try to do, there's only so much one person can do when their caseloads are so high. And so this, we've been talking about this for a couple of years. This is finally at this point. We had essentially really close to the same numbers. So the important document to look at is this one that's kind of more of a horizontal document, which shows you what the current base is. And then you may have heard us talk about the 50 million for public defenders. So that's essentially, in order to ramp up, they actually needed a little bit lower number in the first year. And so then the ongoing number is 52.9. And that gets us to an actual functional system, as opposed to the system that we have right now. So very happy to bring this forward. Again, it's been a long road. We've had bipartisan support throughout, bicameral support. The 50 million additional per year did pass the Senate floor last year, passed the House floor, and just really happy to be at this point, Chair Olson, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Becker-Finn. Representative Becker-Finn. Discussion to the bill. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Chair Becker-Finn, if you could just, I think there's a lot of confusion over the original engrossed, well, it's not the original, the engrossed version that came out of the Judiciary Committee, the House File 90, and the DE2, because the differences are, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like there's an apples to apples comparison in the way that the amendment is written. And if you could just clarify what this bill is doing, it's adding, my understanding is it's adding to the base appropriation 52 million versus 50. And so if you could correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Representative Becker-Finn.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for asking for the clarification. So essentially, when we had this bill originally rejacketed, it was based on the idea of the way that it was written last year, where we were looking at non-budget year appropriation for fiscal year 23. And so further discussion with the public defenders and their leadership, as far as there would not be enough time to put that in place to do anything in 23. And so this was the number that we landed on that is actually needed that would get them to that point. And we also wanted to make sure that we were aligned with the governor and the Senate as well, so that we can move this along and don't have to be slowing this down any more than it already has been, to make sure we're funding this. So again, if you look at the horizontal document, it's 42.7 in 24, and then 52.9 is sort of the ongoing. So a little bit higher than the 50 million that we had talked about last biennium, but that's the number that we're told that we need to get it to that point.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion to House File 90. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you. I'm just going to dive down a little bit more into that amount. So it seems to me that this could have also been put in the governor's budget and the final budget for public defense and so forth as well. Why is it traveling separately rather than included into the normal budgeting process?
Representative Becker-Finn.
This is one of very few things in our state budget that is constitutionally mandated that we fund, and we thought it was important enough that we get this done now. If we have the agreement, there's no reason to wait. And it's important that they know that the funds are there and it doesn't get bogged down at the end of session, so they can start ramping up to get this in place as soon as possible.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just will kind of keep my eye open for that, just make sure that how it fits into the general overall budget. Thank you.
Representative Scott.
Just real quickly, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to have individual bills that pass through this body. We don't do it enough, so bring it on. Bring more of these. I love it.
Representative Garofalo, something similar?
Madam Chair, Representative, I just wanted to highlight, so you said you didn't want it to get bogged down at the end of session. Are you anticipating the end of session is going to get bogged down this year?
Representative Becker-Finn.
Representative Garofalo, you've served here longer than me, but I know I've seen enough in my 6 years to, when you can get something done, you get it done.
All right. Further discussion. Last word, Representative Becker-Finn.
Again, this is in our Constitution. I do appreciate the questions. I think it is important that we clarify those things and appreciate the bipartisan support that we've had to this point. This is exactly the kind of work that we came here to do. And yes, this is a little out of the ordinary and doing something as a standalone, but I knew this was a priority, and it's a priority in the Senate as well. So we're going to get this done and appreciate your support.
Thank you, Representative Becker-Finn. So with that, Representative Becker-Finn renews her motion that House File 90 as amended be re-referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The motion prevails and House File 90 as amended is re-referred to the General Register. Thank you, Representative Becker-Finn. So next up on our agenda for tonight is House File 150, Representative Pinto, the Child Care Stabilization Grants. All right, Representative Pinto, welcome to the testifier table. So would you like to motion that House File 150 be re-referred to the General Register?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And you have an A5 amendment. Would you like to move your amendment before speaking to the bill?
I would. I move the A5 amendment, Madam Chair.
Okay. All those in favor of the A5 amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. To your bill as amended, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So members, HF 150 is aimed at a crisis that was in place really long before the pandemic. Our child care and early learning sector could not possibly be more important to the success of our state, both in the short run for parents being able to work, employers to expand in the short run, but for our state in the long run, because getting kids off to a great start. There's lots of research on brain development, the importance of high quality early experiences, et cetera. Again, this sector was in a rough shape before the pandemic, and what HF 150 does is puts some funds into that system just still in the rest of this biennium, so before July 1. Two components to it. One is that it invests in the early learning scholarship program. It expands eligibility for that program from birth up. This is something that's been discussed for a very long time. It actually passed out of this House like several times. So we can make sure that families who are in need of child care and early learning right now are getting the support that they need through that. And again, that's just through the funds that are put in are just through the end of, the intention is the end of July 1. And then also what this does is to take monthly stabilization grants that have been received by every one of the child care providers and early learning providers in your communities. There's been these monthly stabilization grants to keep the sector afloat. Those grants are scheduled to plunge by 50% in March. And what this bill does is simply reverse that cut and keeps them at the same level they've been at through the end of the biennium through June 30. There's some pretty phenomenal statistics about the importance of those stabilization grants to providers. I think 96% have said that they've been helpful in keeping them in business. When they are in business and afloat, that means that the rest of our economy is afloat. This has gone to family child care centers, and there's great concern about those grants being cut in half. We want to keep them going through the end of the biennium while we put together the rest of the budget. So, Madam Chair, that's HF 150, and happy to have a conversation about it.
Thank you, Representative Pinto. Discussion to the bill. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Pinto, can you provide the average base grant for a child care center versus a family child care provider?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Representative Scott, for the question. So the grant is $430 per person doing this work. So if your person is providing childcare and early learning to a family, then it's $430. Maybe figure that Ms. Mock from House Research will correct me if I say something that's wrong. But so that's that. So a center that has, of course, more people doing that work is going to get more folks. 430 times that number of people. If a family child care has 2 people working in the home, then that's going to be $860. It just depends on the number of people who are doing the work.
Thank you.
Further discussion to House File 150. Okay, seeing no further discussion, Representative Pinto, last word.
Yeah, I'll just thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, members. I'll just note again, this sector is in crisis like right now, and so passing this will keep it afloat as we consider how we can make sure that childcare and early learning can be affordable for families, can be high quality for kids, and provide livable wages for providers into the future as well. And appreciate your support.
Thank you. And with that, Representative Pinto reads his motion that House File 150 as amended be referred to the General Register. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The motion prevails, and House File 150 as amended is re-referred to the General Register. Thank you, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we are actually we're not going to be taking up the last bill that was supposed to be on the agenda for today. We need to just double check some numbers, so you can look for that to reappear on a agenda in the coming days. And I believe with that, the next time I will see you all is 10:30 next Monday morning for this committee, and we always can have call of the chair meetings, but we are not anticipating that between now and next Monday. And with that, we are adjourned.